I'm gonna tear down this 2013 Ford Edge 2.0 Turbo. Came out of this vehicle, which I've worked on before. We've pulled this out before and redid the cylinder head and the timing and all that, but still having a cylinder 1 misfire. It's been very hard to detect, and the assumption now is that we've got a piston ring problem. So I thought I'd go ahead and show the teardown procedures of this particular motor, so if you've got any inquiries into it, maybe I can help you figure something out. So this is exactly what it looks like after I pulled it. So everything that's on here right now is what was on it when I pulled it out of the car. So I left the turbo intact, the lines, left the belt on because I didn't take that off. Fuel injectors, like the intake manifold, has to come off because you've got to get access to the starter that slides right here, which is where the flywheel goes. So that has to all come off. Other than that, though, it's not bad. It's always good to take the crossover pipe for the coolant off just to get it out of the way. So I'm going to take the turbo off first. There's some lines we got to remove. This oil line right here. So that's a 10mm Allen. And then we'll come back over here, make sure that these are disconnected, and come get this guy. See if the impact will just take it off. I broke it loose with the socket there, the ratchet, and then you have to get a new set of exhaust gaskets, and for here, all these gaskets and the crush washers, they all come in a kit together, so you'll want to get new ones so they don't leak when you put it back together. And you got a oil feed line right here. It's got some crush washers on it. It's a 17 mil. And this one in particular, when this engine is installed, this is a lot more difficult to get to. So it's best to do it outside the car if you can, but if you have to do it inside the car, it's a little tough. Some oil. And then on the bottom side of the turbo, you've got this feed line here that it's a 5/16 or an 8 mil. Again, you're going to want to get a new gasket for this guy as well. So I had to use an old one for the nut for this turbo housing. So I got a 13 and the new ones are a 15. So that one's coming out with the stud. Now ideally this should come off if everything else is loose. Just gotta make sure this is detached. Yep, and that comes off as a whole unit like that. If you need to remove these studs, if you don't have the E-Torx that the same size as this, there's also this universal set through Cobalt. This is a 6 mil that fits on here, and it's just got a bunch of splines inside of them that work well with a lot of different bits. Alright, next I'm going to take these coils out. So 5/16 or an 8 mil on those. And then the valve cover all around is 5/16. Well, one caveat to that. Right here in this bracket, which is where the turbo intake tube comes across, there's a 10 mil that sits here for this bracket, and this one is a 10 mil, so I'm going to take those off. I like to put things back where they go when I can, just to help me not forget where all the stuff goes. But do what you can. Come back to the 5/16. Alright, so here's where Ford really irritates me. You got your VVT solenoid sitting right here, and these seals that go around them, and they tend to really stick and tear almost every time you take them out. So we'll see, typically, you know, make sure that all these are loose and popped up, so we're not getting hung up on anything. So typically, you know, you would stick the valve cover and lift it up, but gonna have to keep working with it. Probably get a pry bar and get under there. So, I mean, you gotta plan on replacing your valve cover gasket when you do this, because you're gonna potentially ruin it by having to do this. But as you can see, it's finally breaking. These are actually relatively new, so they're still a little bit pliable, but if yours was old, those most likely are going to crack and break on the way out. Let's take a look. So all this stuff was replaced new, Ford OEM. Everything. And the cams, you can tell there's wear, but there's no scratches or anything on them. So an extra tip for you. So this is the fuel injector rail right here, and right back here, this piece did come down at a square at a 90. So you would literally have to take off. Over here sits the power steering pump and the alternator to get the fuel injector rail out. But when I had it out last time, I just took my grinder and I cut this off at a 45. So now I can take this in and out if I need to without having to remove the power steering pump and alternator while it's sitting on the car. So I don't know why they designed it that way, because that's just retarded. But anyway, just a little tip for you if you want to do that. Alright, so now this bracket needs to come off. There's 4 10mm bolts. And they're all the same length. So this oil separator that lives right here, for one, this thing's kind of fragile, and it sits behind the intake that's right here, and you have to reach in very carefully behind and be able to squeeze these tabs together to get it to release. But when you're coming back with just your fingertips to do this around the intake on both sides, it's very difficult. But just know that it's right here, and the first time I ever took this off, I really had to struggle with it and ended up breaking. And the new one of these is like, I don't know, 60-70 bucks maybe it was more, I don't remember. But just know that that's sitting behind the intake, and that needs to come off after you pull all the bolts out. Alright, so let's get the fuel injector rail off. There's 5 10mm bolts. going to be fuel that comes out of this, so make sure you got a bucket ready. You got your wiring harness here that's connected to your NOx sensors. Yep, get your bucket ready. So depending on how far down you want to break down your cylinder head, depending on what you're doing. So all the fuel injectors are in there. So you can just turn them. Now, I've got fresh gaskets in there, so they should be okay to be turning. If you've got old gaskets, that might cause a problem. You need to pull them and replace them. And this one was getting caught on that just a little bit, just FYI. But this way I can take the cylinder head off and I can set the cylinder head down without messing with the fuel injectors. So the NOx sensors, these harnesses, this clip, you just push in and pull out. Like that. Just notate, which direction they go. This big wiring harness over here connects to another harness that sits over here. And you gotta put it back together. So next up, I'm gonna take off this belt tensioner, and the belt's still attached to it because this has to physically be taken off to put the belt on. So just, if you're replacing that, just remember to put the belt on before you put this back in. There's a washer back behind that. So this washer is sitting behind this one. Wait, no. Am I a liar? That one. I'm sitting behind this one, behind the pulley. Like that. So the water pump pulley needs to come off. So just find a place in here that you can attach a screwdriver to get some tension. So if you're using air tool or ratchet or whatever, it's going to keep it from spinning. Yeah, I like things going back where they belong. I have to bag and tag enough, so oops. There you go, so you don't lose them. Alright, so the crankshaft position sensor sits right here next to the crankshaft, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this because when we do a reinstallation, we've got to loosen this to line it anyway. Also, this is kind of a sensitive plastic bracket, so I think I've had to repair it at least once before, along with this housing that was cracked with some JB Weld and some Gorilla epoxy. And it's a 5/16. Uh-oh, that felt a little sketch coming out. This is where I had to repair it before. I may need to re-repair it again. Okay, so moving on to the air pump and the high pressure fuel pump housing. So this one's a 5/16. It's got 3. So these seals on here, this is a new one, so I'm not worried about it, but if you're taking this off for the first time, you want to make sure you get new seals for that. And swap over to the 13 mil. Alright, so this is the cam lobe that the high pressure fuel pump follows, with the cam follower that's going on here. And it also has an O-ring that, or a seal in here that needs to be replaced. So I just want to show you a picture of the cam follower that sits inside the high pressure fuel pump. So right inside here, this will ride, and the high pressure fuel pump spring will be on this. That follows this right here, this cam lobe. Alright, so we're going to remove the cam caps next that come down here, because I want to, before I disassemble the timing chain, I want to have my cam alignment tool in its slot. So I've got to remove these to do that. And these are installed with an anaerobic sealer, which is kind of it turns hard, so there's potential that I might have to give it a little love to get these off of here. There we go. Now you can't see it, but the anaerobic sealer, it hardens up as it cures. So just be gentle, and it'll eventually make its way. See, almost dropped it and ruined it. And then in here, you can see where it fills in that gap right there. So that's where it goes and install. And then we can get this alignment tool in here as we get the crankshaft set, whichever direction that goes. So next steps, I went ahead and took out #1 cylinder spark plug, and I like to put my engines on top dead center if possible when I take them apart. If it's a good engine that, for example, I've got a brand new timing chain and timing set on this, crank pulley, all those things, so I want to have it back at its original position when I go to tear it down to make sure everything was in fact still aligned. So I'm going to utilize my timing kit installation tool set and make sure everything's back on top dead center where it's supposed to be, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so I'm going to put the alignment dowel in here behind this bolt right here. It's access to the crankshaft, and there's a flat spot where it goes to. So let's just get it broke free. So there's this alignment dowel pin that goes in here. And ideally, once it's screwed in all the way and you turn the crankshaft on the rotation where it comes up and sits flat, you should know it's in top dead center. So just turn it. Okay, so it just bottomed out. Piston's at the top, and then back here, okay, oh, that's right, this unscrews, because this is a liar, actually. Let me show you. Alright, so we've got a 28mm socket that goes on this, because that just drives the air pump. That is not the alignment tool. So you've got a 24mm wrench on the camshaft on that spot where it goes for a wrench. So you want to use that to hold it with. Don't use that pin to hold it with, and take this and loosen it up. Nice and easy. If you try to use this as the alignment piece, it'll drive you nuts because it'll never line up correctly. Well, that's a lot longer than I remembered it. Okay. So now you can see you've got these alignment marks that are both horizontal, and that's at top dead center. And the alignment pin is all the way in. Now when you go to actually put it together, there's a few more steps, but as far as knowing this is in the correct location, so this kit is off of Amazon, which you never know what you're going to get, but you want to make sure that it fits in that slot and this slot. Right in there. I can go a little bit farther. So I may have to just slightly move this to get the slack off of it. But also that thing, and who knows the thickness is correct. But anyway, so we'll make sure the lot's in place, and then we'll finish tearing it down. But I think what I'll do is end this one as a part 1, and then do a part 2 of tearing down the rest of the block all the way, because I need to get the pistons out.